On October 26, 2023, a group of 12 Australian friends, 4 women and 8 men, all in their late 20s, were ready for an ambitious project. Their plan seemed simple: a 30-minute helicopter flight into the vast Simpson Desert to film a short documentary and return before noon. At 5 a.m., filled with anticipation, all 12 boarded the helicopter. The first half hour offered no perfect vistas. After a brief discussion, they urged the pilot to push deeper. Another 45 minutes passed. They were now nearly 200 kilometers into the wilderness. It was 5:45 a.m., and the early sun cast a golden glow on the dunes. Suddenly, a perfect location spotted. But before they could celebrate, a shadow consumed the horizon. A colossal dust storm, Yowai, was racing towards them. The air turned violent. The helicopter buckled, and within moments, the world vanished, replaced by a blinding, chaotic swirl of sand. The helicopter was uncontrollable, plummeting. In a moment of desperate clarity, one of the men, Ben, shouted, "Throw it out! Lighten the load!" Frantically, they began hurling their supplies, water bottles, bags, the medical kit, and all their food, out the door, hoping to retrieve them on the ground. Seconds before impact, they made the terrifying choice. Jump! They leapt into the soft sand below, hitting the dunes hard. They were bruised but alive. The helicopter wasn't so lucky. It slammed into the desert floor and was immediately engulfed in flames. The roar of the crash faded. The 12 friends regrouped, checking injuries. Mostly cuts, bruises, and shattered nerves. Their lifeline, the helicopter, was a smoldering wreck. No cell service, no GPS. They were utterly alone. They managed to recover the gear they had tossed, but it was a meager supply, barely enough food and water for 2 days. They had 2 choices: wait for a rescue that might never come, or walk. Waiting felt like a death sentence. They decided to move, using the sun's position to guide them. The midday sun was an anvil. They used spare clothes to shield their heads. Water was rationed immediately. That first night, the temperature plummeted. They dug shallow pits in the sand, huddling together for warmth. They found some dry bushes. Markway, recalling a survival show, suggested digging for roots. They spent an hour chewing woody fibers for a tiny bit of moisture as they crossed a dune that evening. Saraside suddenly cried out. She had stepped on a mulga snake, a king brown snake, which struck her leg before vanishing. Panic set in. Liam, who had basic first aid training, quickly applied a pressure bandage. They had no anti-venom. They carried her, spotting a large skeletal tree in the distance and making for its meager shade. By day 4, their supplies were gone. They made a critical decision: rest during the day, scavenge for food and water, travel only at night. The next morning, their decision was overshadowed by tragedy. Sarah succumbed to the venom. She was the first. Now they were 11. By day 6, 2 more members, David and Chloe, were severely ill from dehydration. They found a small rock overhang and dug into the sand beneath it, creating a makeshift shelter. They split into teams. Liam and Emily searched for signs of underground water near rocky outcrops. The others hunted for edible plants or small lizards. After hours of digging, Liam and Emily found it: damp soil. They dug frantically, eventually reaching a small, muddy seep. The water was gritty, but it was life. They survived on roasted lizards and bitter plants, but after 4 days in the shelter, their relief turned to grief again. David and Chloe never recovered. They died on the 10th day. Now they were 9. Staying meant death. They decided to move again, gathering what little food they could. On the night of the 10th day, the 9 survivors set out. Their new rhythm: walk all night, find shelter by day. They made a simple sundial with a stick to track the passing hours. Day 20. They found tracks and dug up a dormant desert marsupial, roasting it over a tiny fire. Day 23. A flicker of hope. Kangaroos in the distance. Kangaroos mean water. They tried to give chase, but the animals bounded away. Around day 50, another storm hit, more violent than the first. They huddled together, linking arms. When it finally passed, they were in a new alien landscape, and they were no longer 9. Mark and Tom Chu were gone, vanished, swallowed by the sand. They searched, calling their names until their throats were raw. Now, they were 7. The 7 survivors were ghosts. On the 261st day, they collapsed. The will to move was gone. They had no food, no water, and their throats were too dry to speak. They lay together in the sand, waiting for the end. But they woke, not to the sun, but to rain. At first, they thought it was a shared hallucination, but it was real. A sudden, brief, glorious downpour. They tilted their heads back, mouths open, weeping with relief. They filled their last remaining bottles and bags. It was enough for maybe 5 more days. The water gave them a final burst of strength. They pushed on. By how day 70? They were back at 0. Emily collapsed and had to be carried. On day 76, they lost another. A man named Peter lay down and didn't get back up. Now, there were 6. They walked through that night, numb. They collapsed as the sun rose on the 77th day. When they woke, hours later, they saw it. It wasn't a hallucination, a dirt track, and on it, tire prints. The track gave them a surge of adrenaline. They followed it, staggering, for 2 more days. On the 29th day, they stumbled into a small, remote Aboriginal community. The villagers understood immediately, rushing out with water. The 6 survivors were airlifted to a hospital. They were treated for severe dehydration, malnutrition, and exposure. Their bodies were skeletal, but they were alive. Their story of survival became a legend, later captured in a best-selling book titled Red Sand Endurance. It stands as a testament to the terrifying power of the desert and the unyielding strength of the human will to live.